Thank you, convener. I was going to ask the Cabinet Secretary, as I did last week to Fergus Ewing, about the National Trust for Scotland, and whether there was any update on the Scottish Government's communication with the National Trust. I'm particularly concerned about some of their sites in my constituency, but also the idea that they could be cutting back on staff at a difficult time when the furlough scheme is available to them, and particularly cutting back staff at outdoor venues, which are likely to be attracting significant numbers of visitors and be key to restarting tourism.
Mm. Thank you very much, Oliver. This is very serious indeed. The National Trust for Scotland is an important institution in Scotland. It is also an independent charity, so they make their own decisions, and they obviously have taken a very harsh approach to tackling this issue. They have already issued or are planning to issue notice of redundancies to not just some staff, but 400. This is really a really significant change and move. They have got particular challenges themselves. I understand that in terms of their makeup and in terms of their financial arrangements, precisely because they are a charity. When this was brought to my attention, I immediately asked for advice from my officials on the situation and to meet with National Trust for Scotland. So I met virtually with the National Trust for Scotland Chair and Chief Executive on Friday. It was helpful to find out more information about what they were trying to do. But their proposed closures would be very, very significant indeed. Now, everybody's facing hardship in these difficult times. I understand that. But we also expect national institutions to provide leadership. And across the tourism sector, people are having to take tough decisions. We know that we're going to be in difficult times, but nobody has done what the National Trust for Scotland has done. Everybody has tried to at least keep their the workforce in employment, to use the very welcome job retention scheme. And what is really concerning is that the National Trust for Scotland moved on the redundancy issue, even though it was quite clear, although it hadn't quite been announced, that the UK was extending the period for the job retention scheme. I understand they are also thinking, as perhaps Claire Baker was alluding to from the museums, about next year, not just this year. And I'm not pretending there are not problems. I know, for example, Historic Environment Scotland have lost are likely to lose £21 million of income. So they have got, their income has dropped dramatically. So when I met them, I've agreed that we will bring together Scottish Government officials and also those with charity law expertise. And Scottish Enterprise has already spoken to them in terms of their operations and what we might want to do. They are asking for a significant amount of funding from the Scottish Government that could be spent on, if we had it, a number of different areas. I've made clear to them that I don't think it is at all tenable for the Scottish Government to provide funding to them at a time that they're trying and they would want to continue to make their staff redundant to the scale that they're talking about. So I will try and work with them. I will try and come up with a solution, but I have not been impressed about how they've gone about this, and I've been quite clear to them. Your point about the need for open spaces when we come through this, probably one for people wanting to enjoy, easing out of lockdown in those areas. But your point about tourism in your constituency and indeed in other parts of the country is really important, because when we get to the stage that we want to welcome people back, we want them to welcome back to places that can provide them with the breadth of scenery and the breadth of experience. So, there's no point in opening, well, not one point, but I mean, if we open our tourism sector without places for people to go because they're closed, that isn't helpful in and of itself. So I know that's quite harsh words, but I think of all the experiences that we've all had to live through, obviously the experience of the health services, those that sadly have died and their families, there's a lot of hardship out there, a lot of hardship. So people are trying to see and chart through a very difficult situation. But I just don't think the National Trust for Scotland have thought about trying to take people with them. I think they're trying to be quite hard-nosed about what they're doing. And I would appeal to them, as I have done when I met them, that they need to work collaboratively and cooperatively and work with their staff. Actually talk to their staff, and I will be talking to the Prospect, the union that represents the majority of their staff on this issue. So I know that was quite an extended answer, but I do know that people want to hear what the government is doing or trying to do. There is, again, for many of these things, an instant solution, but because of their particular makeup, we may need to try and see whether, in terms of technical support for them, in terms of their underpinning financially, what we can do. But they are an independent charity. They can decide to do things themselves. But sometimes if you're such a big organisation and you're so important to Scotland, your duty and responsibility is not just to the bottom line of the accounts, it's to our heritage, it's to our people, whether they are visitors or whether they are staff.